Today's interview is with Ed Henk of Coopersville, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, now Ed, can you start us off with some basic background? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Grand Rapids. I was born in June 21st, first day of summer in 1944. And west side of Grand Rapids, I graduated in '62 from Union High School. I went to, right afterwards, I went to Grand Rapids Junior College. I spent about 3 semesters there, realizing that even at that time, a 2-year degree wasn't going to be enough, so I transferred up to Ferris. At that time, I was getting into data, what they call data processing. I was basically I was going to be a systems analyst, and at that time there was only really two places in West Michigan that really had anything to do with on a 4-year degree. It was Michigan State and Ferris. So Michigan State had more of an engineering and scientific. I was more wanted to go to the business, and that's why I ended up basically in Ferris.
Okay. To back up a little bit, what did your family do for a living while you were growing up?
My dad was a salesman for a butcher supply, and eventually went into what they call, he did spices like that, but it was custom and bulk. He worked for our, sold to places like, Farmer Pete's, processing plants, Kroger, did everything in carloads or tank load type of things. Yeah, his territory was pretty much all over the Midwest, from Michigan, all of Michigan down to Indiana and Ohio. Being a German, he worked with a lot of the German sausage makers and stuff like that.
Okay. And had he been in the service, or was he kind of...
Yes, he was World War II. In fact, being German, my grandparents came from Germany. My grandfather worked as a foreman in the 20s and 30s in furniture, and he brought my grandmother in from Germany, and up to, even when she passed away, she was in her 90s, she still had a real broken German accent. She was 100% German on that side of the family. And he ended up in the Aleutian Islands. Then when he finished with that, he ended up, he was in an airborne unit. He was an instructor in Fort Benning. That's one reason why I went to Fort Benning and OCS, because we both kind of relate to what he was back there then too, so yeah.
All right. Now, in the period there where you're going to college, did you have much awareness about what was going on in Vietnam or the draft or those
Well, when I was in Union High School, I was in the ROTC for 3 years. So I was pretty much aware of what was going on at that time.
Okay. You were doing ROTC. I mean, did you give any thought to enlisting, or was...
Yes, I did. I thought, well, that's what I was... I figured at that time what the draft was going on, and this has always been my idea, because we talked that before that, because I was kind of thinking ahead of what it's going to be like, because I knew if anybody was going to get drafted, the first place they were going to go into Vietnam, so I wanted to be prepared on that. I was probably a good Boy Scout and that type of thing. I wanted to make sure I had all my bases covered. So I was at Union for my sophomore, junior, and senior year, so I was there basically for just in 3 years at the ROTC. And so basically what that was basic training, because I had all, how to march, and I was on the rifle team, I was on the drill team, even did some color guard work at basketball games and that type of thing. So I was pretty much aware of what the military and everything was at the time. But that was one reason I wanted to go to college first, get my 4-year degree, because I figured once I was drafted, came back home, I had to finding out what the people were coming back and what the situation was at the time, I'd never finish up. So I wanted to get my 4-year degree in, so that's basically, I went in and got my exemption or anything for college, and that's when I got drafted out of college. I was actually a junior in my 3rd year at Ferris.
Okay. So how was it that you get drafted before you, while you're still in school?
They give you 4 years to get a 4-year degree.
Okay. But you had, because you switched
Because
programs.
when you transfer, and I was in a 2-year, and I was taking technical English, so I didn't have regular English.
Right.
And that was kind of funny, because I did finish up when I came back. It was November of '68. By February, I was back up to Ferris in their winter term.
Right.
And in 1968, when they had all the race riots, I was up in the Star Educational Building taking a humanities class because they didn't have taken it in, at the time they didn't have it at JC. And when I was going up to Ferris, so I was going into a data processing class. I was with the business administration, and he majored in data processing. Well, at that time it was so small that you took data processing 101 in the fall, you took data processing 102 in the winter term, and in the spring term you took data processing 103. You couldn't take, in the spring term, you couldn't take data processing 101, so you had to be in a certain area at that time, so I had to give up a lot of the freshman classes. Then when I was in my senior year, in order to graduate, I had to have humanities and all my social studies classes. So I ended up being, about 22 years old in a freshman class in 1968 in the Star Educational Building, and one of the nights, that's when they had the race riots down there.
All right. Now that's sort of after you're back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
At that point. Okay. I was going to back up to the other end of it. So basically, you've had your 4-year deferment, and now as far as the Army's done.
Yeah. The draft board said you had a 4-year to get a 4-year degree, and that ended up in probably September of 66, and I was drafted in December of 66.
Okay. Now, take us then through the process at that point. You get the draft notice, then what's the sequence of events in terms of induction and testing and all of this stuff?
Well, knew pretty much what I was going at that time. I was just doing, I think I was working at Spartan Stores in warehouse, and that was just more of a part-time job. We were just loading trucks and everything, and actually it was, I don't know, this kind of a normal type thing, and I just went home and just quit one night, went home, packed my bags. My mother took me down to the bus station. The Salvation Army gave me a little New Testament Bible, got on the bus, went to Detroit, did all my, whatever they do, the physical and everything. Then we took a train down to, actually it was St. Louis, and then we took a bus down to Fort Leonard Wood. And I took my basic training down there, did everything for basic training there. Like we were talking before, I was thinking, well, I was going to be there for 2 years, and then just kind of decided what am I going to do. When I was down there in basic training, I saw all these guys coming back from Vietnam, and the vast majority of them were pretty well messed up. There was no psychological evaluation of these guys or anything. Once they got their orders, they went and they just stuck them into some kind of a basic training unit. And the guys didn't know what to do with them, so they just pretty much let them set off to the side, and they just sat around day after day doing nothing, sitting around the day room or whatever. And we were doing all our training. We come back, and I had a chance to maybe talk to some of the guys, and that's where I was getting some really good experience or good advice from them on that. One I got a kick out of. He says, whatever you do, he says, always take your fuel jacket. This was the wintertime when I was down there and everything. He says, when you go to Vietnam, they don't give you a fuel jacket. Everybody thinks it's 120 degrees. He says, sometimes it gets down to 50 degrees. When you think it's 50 degrees in Vietnam, you think it's going to snow. So that was one of the things I always brought with me. I said, best thing, because especially in the monsoon seasons and when at night, it really gets cold and it gets awful damp down there.
So basically, these were men who were completing their 2 years. They'd been drafted or whatever. They spent their year in Vietnam, and now they have to park them someplace for the last few months.
Well, because you're in there for 2 years, so you're spending 8 weeks in basic training, another 8 weeks in AIT. They ship you to Vietnam. By the time you come back, you got another probably 4, 5 months to go. So what did they do with them? You couldn't put them in a regular unit. I mean, only for 3 or 4 months. So what they were doing at that time was putting them in with training units. Well, you had a lot of company commanders. All they were National Guard. You didn't know how to deal with these guys. And there was, there was no way, like the process today. They go through probably about 2 months of some type of therapy and everything like that. For me, when I came back, when I went up to Ferris, the best thing for me was we had a vets club up there. There was about 200 vets, and we could talk with them and everything like that. And one guy would say, "Boy, I had these strange dreams and everything like that. You think those are strange? You ought to see what mine are." And everybody, "Oh, that's nothing. You ought to see what I'm having on there. Oh, we must be normal."
Right.
Because everybody was having these weird dreams. Oh, well, I'm post-traumatic stress.
Sure.
And at that time, nobody knew what that was, or would tell you what it was. But I think they knew, but nobody,
Yeah. Well, the military had been aware. I mean, even in World War II, they were aware that there were various kinds of effects, but they weren't quite sure.
They gave them all kinds of names.
What to do with them? Yeah, it was combat fatigue and so forth. But they didn't really know what to do with it, and there wasn't much of any kind of a system for engaging it. They had to kind of figure that out as they went.
They just threw you right out into the general public.
Right. Now it's going to go back into your story. So describe a little bit what life was like at Leonard Wood.
Oh, it was different because we were down. Leonard was the southern part of Missouri, and when I graduated from basic, I stayed down there for combat engineering school, and I wanted to get into demolition work. And when I was in basic, I decided to go into OCS. I figured out I had this 3 or 4 month period where I wanted to use up, so instead of using it on the back side, I'll go into Vietnam, I used it on the front side. So I thought, well, why don't I go to OCS? Because at the time, you could sign up for it. And the thing I wanted was, I says, can I quit any time? If I signed up for it, I'd want to be, oh no, they said, no problem on there. As long as you sign up, you're still in for 2 years to the time you graduated. And once you graduate, you have to re-up for 4 more years. No, hey, that's no problem on that. And so I figured when I went into, one reason I wanted to go in there was you're trained by Rangers in patrolling guerrilla techniques. You fired every weapon in infantry inventory. I could call in artillery. I could call in airstrikes. The whole 9 yards. This is what I wanted to do. So passed the test. Then you had to have a infantry MOS. So since I was already down in Fort Leonard Wood, I said, why can't I just go into combat engineering? And I said, no problem or anything. So big slash one. And even down there, we were getting a lot of people from the hills of Kentucky and Tennessee. And this, you got to remember, this was 1968, and it was the deal with these. But for me, it was.
Or 67 at this point. And don't hit your microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And for me, that was really a culture shock, because coming from the west side of Grand Rapids, and in 68, we were having all these race riots. That was bad enough. And down 66, 67, 68 and all that, and they were, that was another thing. Some of my best friends, even in Vietnam, were black. They were, because I came home and said, oh, the people, they were having race riots in Vietnam, and people, on that, and I said, that's what really threw me off when I came back. I said, people were looking at the news and everything, said, well, the whole war was, you knew exactly what was going on, the 5 o'clock news. I'm looking at that. They didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. It was completely opposite. I don't know what they were feeding various, these news media were coming up with this. So.
Yeah. But basically, so you were training then. Now, you were training alongside people from just different parts of the country.
All over,
and, you had black soldiers and so forth there. Were there a lot of white Southerners there as well?
Oh, very much, yeah.
And what kind of dynamic was there between the white Southerners and the black soldiers?
Actually, it wasn't that. There was, to a certain extent. I think it was more. Well, I don't know if it was more with the Southerners. I don't know how they explain it on that. It was different, but there was a tension between them more than anything else. But I don't think there was no aggression.
Right.
I mean, well, I hate you, or on that. And I think everybody, what they did is we all trained together. Mm-hmm. Then when we went back to the barracks, everybody went in their own groups. Mm-hmm. So it was actually ended up more like cliques. You had the black clique, you had the southern clique, and you had with us with the the northern white cliques type of thing. Basically, that's what it ended up.
Now, did the drill instructors and so forth just treat everybody the same, or did any?
Pretty much. We never had that much on both sides, or on basic and AIT. But the thing is, we were so busy. Where you really ran into problems was not so much at night because everybody was tired. Because they ran you 8, 10 hours a day, and more was on weekends, and especially towards the end of the class or the program, they gave you more time to go off base. So everybody left, couldn't wait, so everybody just left on that and came back Sunday night. So even at that time, and I didn't have that much of a problem in the barracks or anything like that at that time.
Okay. Now, if you went off base, this is off of Leonard Wood. I mean, what was
there's nothing in Leonard Wood.
Yeah.
It's nothing like where if you had to go up to St. Louis or something, that's probably be a little different. But there wasn't really all that much going on around.
You're down.
You're on lost in no, that's what they call lost in the woods because there is nothing down there.
Yeah, I mean like Joplin or something, is it?
Or something like that. Yeah. In fact, one time we went. One of the guys in our unit was. I can't think of it. Just a little town down there. We went down there, and they treated, we were Northerns. We're going down these Southern people. They just welcomed us into their, we were eating all the Southern food. I didn't even know what it was. Some of it was possum and raccoon. And, man, I said, this is better than the food we had there. My idea of a diet is a seafood diet. I see the food and eat it, so I wasn't that fussy what I had to eat and everything. I was having a good time down there.
Now you did. So you have the basic. Now, was basic training relatively easy for you to adjust to?
Oh yeah, because I had 3 years in military. I mean, that was nothing. I was in drill team. I had the rifle team and everything on that. Now, in fact, I went in December, and they gave us leave for Christmas for 2 months or 2 weeks, or let's say about 10 days. So by the time we came back, it was almost 2 weeks. We were well into January. And all these, when we came back, they were having a hard time because everybody forgot what they were taught for the couple weeks before that. So I helped the drill sergeant out with these guys from, a lot of these Southern guys didn't know how to drill. They didn't know their left from the right. Because you're supposed to start out with your left foot, and they're starting out with their right foot, and it was bizarre. So what I did, so I told them, or they came out to ask me, because I knew my drill, would I take a couple, because most of the guys in the unit, I forgot how many, we were like 30 of us in there, there was about 5 or 6 that just weren't getting it. In fact, they had to learn how to do their left and the right. They took a garbage can cover and put it in the right hand. Okay, this is your right, and you start out with your left foot, and you go this way, then you go to your right with the garbage can. So when we came back, we were getting so far behind what they had to when they graduated. So I had, they gave me some time to work with some of these Southern guys on that, and I knew some of these drill things on it. So we talked. Actually, once we got going there, that they were pretty smart. They kind of picked up on it. So I said. Kind of looked around. I said, well, we got some time to kill around here. So I taught them some of these drill movements we use in the drill team. By instead of doing right shoulder arm, we kick it and rotate it and throw it up on that. And so we went out there a couple of times on that. What did you teach these guys? So,
Now, your advanced individual training, did you do that at Leonard Wood as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's strictly for combat engineering.
Okay, and that was the engineering part. All right. So what are they actually teaching you there then at that stage?
Actually, a little bit of everything, because combat engineer is pretty much a broad spectrum, almost like an infantry thing. Because you got everything from like in an infantry, you got learning how to run a machine gun to individual weapons, and 45s and that type of thing. We did a lot of bridge building on that. That's what they do. We make a lot of. Well, our main job was up in, even in Vietnam, was when we opened up the landing zones. We made all this security, what we call the green line, put out all the barbed wire, all the mines. We used a lot of claymore mines, put out all the flue gas and this type of thing out there. So we learned a lot of that. And when I was waiting for my orders for OCS, they had a special class for just on demolitions and mines and everything, where they have had an area with tripwires and how to find the tripwires and how to deactivate the mines and everything on that. So that was a specialty there.
Okay. Now, were they gearing this very much toward the kinds of things that you would do in Vietnam?
About 100%, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And were you being taught by people who had been there, or mostly not yet?
Well, these were older NCOs, and a lot of them were from Korea, that type of thing. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so you complete this, and now as part of the master plan to not go to Vietnam right away, now you go from AIT into OCS? Is that the next step?
Infantry OCS.
Okay, and where do they send you for that?
Fort Benning, Georgia. That was the infantry school down there.
Okay. Was the base basically the same kind of place as Leonard Wood, or how was
No,
it
that was a whole different ball game. The bigger town, Columbus, or I think it was Georgia down there and everything. Yeah, it's completely different down there. That was the airborne school. They had Ranger school there. That was, well, probably 10 times bigger than what Leonard Wood was. Actually, that was a quite small thing. Like I said, it was Fort Leonard Wood. It was out in the middle of nowhere.
All right. And then what was the actual curriculum like in OCS? What were you doing?
Well, you were, was it the first 12 weeks you were just basic, then 12 to 18 weeks you were intermediate, then after 18 to 21 weeks you were senior. And that's where you wore a infantry blue thing and you kind of walked everything. You were basically like a third lieutenant. That's where you had to learn how to be an officer. Everything from basic or intermediate was strictly, we learned how to fire every weapon in infantry inventory. We call mortars. We fired or called in there, know how to call in airstrikes, call in our different artillery and everything on that. That's all I concentrated. All this other harassment that you had, especially as a basic, they had you. We were running everywhere. You're in the middle of Georgia. This is the summer '67. It's 80, 90 degrees out there, 80, 90% humidity, and talking marches and everything. Or they ran us out pretty good their first 16, 18 weeks there.
So this was more intense than what infantry basic had been?
Yeah. Very, very much, yeah.
All right. Now, at this stage, were you being trained by people who had been to Vietnam, or were they still mostly just...
No, like I said, my TAC officer, his name was Lieutenant Hughes. They call us Hughes Horrible. And he wasn't in Vietnam, but he just finished his Ranger and Airborne training. He was the first lieutenant. The company commander was actually from Germany. He came to the United States and I don't know, enlisted or whatever we never really found out how much training. He had a lot of infantry training in Germany. I don't know what his career credentials or anything were on that. And the other officer, I think two of them were just graduated themselves from OCS, and they're waiting to go into Ranger training. So yeah, we never had anybody at that time in our unit.
Okay. Now, did the training itself, did they try to simulate situations you would encounter in Vietnam?
Yeah. Where we got the training, where I enjoyed it, was we were trained by Rangers, and that's where you got it, where the nitty-gritty was. It wasn't the cadre so much, but it was the training. And so, yeah, they took us a couple times to down the southern part of Georgia. That's where the swamps, the low part are. They put you down there probably for about 2, 3. I think one was about 10 days down there. The big training down there. And you had what they call lane graders. And every once in a while, you look around, and it was a different guy. And what the idea was, you could see them, but they couldn't talk to you or converse with you. All they did, they were just there to observe.
Right.
And you ended up with a radio and some mortars, and they'll just, different exercises what you had to do and everything. Then for resupply, they tell you had to go to a certain area. That's where you got your water, your food, additional information. Then you got your orders to, for the next exercise, what to do, what the next mission was going to be. And once in a while, what they do is they booby trap it. on that. And the link reader said, okay, he's dead, or whatever, you know, that type of thing. So we got kind of tired of that, and I will go, being a demolition specialist, and I just came through that class there. I mean, that's not what had the big explosions or anything on that. Just they had small caps. They pick something up with an anti-lift device, and this goes bang, that type of thing. So I kind of looked around and found out anti-lift device basically is just like a mouse trap. You pick the thing up, thing goes up, and it goes bang on it. Well, if you stick a wire down through that thing, it'd keep it from going up. So we just picked up what we wanted to go out, and I just reset the booby traps and booby trapped the guys that picked up for me on it. So you just go put another box in it and pull the wire out.
All right. So in general, I mean, so how long did you actually stay in officer training?
Well, about 15, 16. The idea when I went in there was only going to be there about 8, 10 weeks. Figured I wanted to then leave on it. Then after a while, I kind of got it. This might not, kind of thinking to it. This might not be too bad. In fact, I had my uniform and everything all ordered. And about the 16th week, 17th week, I woke up. I said, "What am I doing?" Because I said, "I don't want to." The bottom line is I'm going to be here for 4 years. I was still interested in going back and finishing up. I didn't want to make the military a career. But I was in the top 5% of my class, and they didn't want you to go. I mean, if you were on the bottom 5% of the class, they'd be glad to get rid of you. Because by the time the 18th week, they weeded out a lot of people. Probably, I would say, a good 25 to 30% of our class was gone by the 18th week. And I put my letter of resignation in, and of course they were giving me all kinds of hard time. I talked to battalion commander and everything, and the only way I got out of it was I went to the company commander one night, and I just basically, told him, I said, "Sir," I said, "basically, going through all this, I finally realized the difference between the Boy Scouts of America and the United States Army." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "At least the Boy Scouts of America have adult leadership." Well, that German just turned into a real German. His little captain's bars in there turned into SS's, and he just goes, "Out!" And I ran out the door, went past my all the people around there, up the stairs, and I was gone bag and baggage by the next morning out there. And I ended up in an airborne holding company to wait for my orders, but it took about 2 weeks, and then had about a 2-week leave, then I went to Vietnam.
All right. Now, how do they physically get you out to Vietnam?
Well, I met a friend of mine, it's John Tegmeyer. He was in New York, so I spent, I had 2 weeks. I spent a week at home, and a little more than that, and went with him for a weekend, and we went out of what's the one in New Jersey? We went out of New Jersey. I can't remember the name right now.
You mean the airport?
No,
Fort Dix? Or?
No, that's California.
No, Fort Dix is in New Jersey. Fort Ord is in California.
Okay, yeah, it was Dix. Okay, and Fort Dix in New Jersey. Got on a plane on that, went up to Anchorage, Alaska, went over to Yokohama, then over, I went into Benoit.
Okay. Now, were these all military aircraft?
Yeah.
Or?
They're civilian. Well, no, this
or
was civilian. Yeah, they were chartered. I think it was Tiger Airline we went over on.
All right. And then, so what was your first impression of Vietnam when you landed there?
Oh, the smell. we walked off there. It was November of '67 there, and that's the heat and the humidity and just the smell. This is just. The guys even were telling us, this is one of the guys I was going over there with was a Korean War vet. He was a medic. He says he's been in Korea and he's been in Japan. He says this was the second tour in Vietnam. He says this is the dirtiest country I've ever been in. He says we walked out and he says you could even just smell it. Just to us it was everything just smelled like everything was decaying. And everything on that time. That was my first impression of it.
All right. Now, when you get off the airplane, then what happens to you?
We got in these buses, and that was really kind of interesting. They were just regular buses, but they were all OD, but they had barbed wire. Well, not barbed wire, but all the windows were all fenced off where I had on it. And then we went into a holding company. We were there. They said we're there for about a week or so just to acclimatize ourselves, which it was, because November in up north was pretty cold. I mean, even at Fort Dixon there, and so we just did a bunch of little oddball things. Go and collect this. Went into a supply unit, picked up things and took it to the different PXs, and went pick up food, went to the different mess halls and that type of thing.
Okay. Was there any kind of specialized gear or equipment that they were issuing to you, or just the regular stuff?
Pretty much everything I had and everything. I was supposed to go originally to that's what I thought I was going to have it pretty much made. I was supposed to go to I forgot the army or artillery unit south of Saigon. So I figured, well, being a combat engineer, there isn't that much to do in those areas. I figured I'd just be filling sandbags and working around the area, just doing various things on that. And I said, well, that wouldn't be too bad. Maybe I could, get into Saigon a few times like that. Well, that didn't last long. As I was waiting for my orders, and that's when I found out they cut my orders to go to the first cav. And then I said, where's the first cav? And he says, well, that's up in the Central Highlands. Well, that's where all the action is. I went, oh, brother, you might know.
All right. But then where do you actually then go?
From Benoit, I went to Anke, and that's what was with 8th Engineers headquarters were. And they had what they call a charm school on that, being in the first Air Cav, because everything was done by helicopters, and that's where you had to learn we learned how to rappel out of helicopters. They had a big tower on that, and they sent you out for a day or for a night on there. You go out with probably was it about 12 of us in the unit, and we stayed out overnight. We set out our trip flares and everything like that. Came back. That lasted about a week or so. Then shipped out to Pong Song up to Camp Evans.
Okay. Now, where in Vietnam is Camp Evans located? If you were looking on a map, where would it be?
Yeah, if I had it's right along the east coast. It's northern part of the Central Highlands, more towards the east side. We were probably right off of QL1.
Okay. And is that then where you were based out of, or?
For that portion of the time, I ended up in the headquarters company. They put me out in another unit. I think it was a B company. It was working with 173rd Airborne on it, and that's where I kind of ended up in a little bit of trouble. When, like we were talking before, up until that point, they were when they were drafting people, they were drafting them, basically all the people out of the ghettos and everybody they could get. Then by the time myself and everybody else, that's what I found out too when I was in my holding company in Fort Benning. I thought I was the only one doing this. Well, there was about 12 of us in the unit itself the same way. Everybody quit and was ready to get their orders for Vietnam. And unlike today, that's why I don't think they'll have another draft, because I think, well, how would I put that? I'm probably there's many reasons why they don't have a draft today. I'm one of them, just one of them, because I went into the unit, and I went up to the platoon sergeant and the platoon leader, and the platoon leader at that time was, the second lieutenant. He came out of Fort Belvedere. He's strictly an engineer. I came out of Fort Leonard Wood. So I knew a lot more than what he did. So I came up to him and I says, well, put it nicely, I says, don't mess up, because I will take over.
You told him that?
I told him that.
Okay, and you're a private at this point?
I'm on E3.
Okay.
On it. And we were, it wasn't really going over that. But then a couple days later, that's kind of a long story. A couple days later, in the company area, a unit of the 173rd platoon was being, well, almost like what they call the lost platoon. They were getting hit pretty hard. Mm-hmm. They didn't have anybody that was close enough to get in there. They wanted somebody to first cav. We had to rappel in there. There was a double and triple canopy jungle in there. So, way they, I forgot what unit it was. They took, let's see, the platoon, the platoon leader, platoon sergeant, myself, and I think 3 or 4 other guys. And I'd never been on this was my first combat thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a clue what was going on. Everybody else was, pretty well seasoned and everything on it. So I'll make a long story short. We were coming in. We had to rappel in because the idea for us to get in there, they need some combat engineers to blow out an area to get a landing zone to get the wounded and everything out. So we're coming in there, and we had to make 2 trips. There, I forgot how many. There's usually about 5 or 6 choppers in here. Well, when you rappel out, only 4 people can go out. You got 8, 10 people in here. Well, then when you rappel, all 4 have to go off at the same time because the plane, was doing this number, going up and down. So I didn't realize it, but when you go in, they had it all planned out. But I'm coming in, on a second thought on this thing here, and I was sitting in the doorway. They say, they give the thumbs up to get ready. So we had a Swiss seat on it with a D-ring, and I hook up, and I'm out on the line there, and everybody's kind of looking at me. I thought, what? They're kind of, what are you doing? I thought, on it. So they give the signals to go. So I go down. Well, I didn't realize that they were going to make another pass. They want the infantry to go down first, clear out the area and everything, then come in, because we were considered what they call the log ship. And usually you're like the 2nd or 3rd one back into in the line on it. And that's why they had was it 4 extra guys. And they went in, and we were supposed to go around, then the combat engineers were supposed to go down in there. Then they were supposed to have it all cleared out. Well, I ended up down there. Fortunately, I ended up in a little valley on that. I had my pack, and I had my M16 on it. And all I saw was green tracers just going over my nose on that. And the first lieutenant, this is, okay, trooper, don't move. I go, yeah, no, Dick Tracy, I'm not moving out of this thing on here. So the next thing they came in was ARA and gunships, and they were just literally 30 feet off the ground. In fact, when the ARA goes, the 2.75 rockets are about as equivalent to a 105 round. Well, every time one of those rounds are going off, the ground was shaking. I'm going up here, and these tracers are going over the top of me, and everything. And they finally got them pretty much clear. The tracers all stopped, so everybody had to get up and go on it. So we're, they're taking this little hill, or positions where the NVA were in there, and the sergeant, platoon sergeant, told me, took me ahead. He says, Ed, stay behind me on that, because once they went through there, we had to basically clean up, make sure nobody was around, and everything like that. I said, what? He says, we don't take any prisoners there, because we didn't have enough time to go back, because we had to go back to 173rd and clear out this area on there. So where I'm going around there making sure, on it, and right afterwards he comes up and he's kind of bawling. He says, "You're just wasting ammunition." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "That severed head there, that you were shooting at?" And I says, "Well, yeah." He says, "Well, that was just a waste of ammunition." And I was going, I thought he was kind of kidding after a while, because when we were going up there, I saw the severed head on it, and the eyes were open. Well, at that time, the only dead person I ever saw was in a funeral home with the eyes closed. So you had to make a split decision like that. So I'm going like that, bang.
So you saw a head, but didn't think about the fact that there was nothing attached to it.
So I just blew it away, and you just keep right on going. And then that's where all of a sudden this thing started. That's about kind of like my down spiral pretty much from then on. That's why life, after a while, you get to a point, life really doesn't mean that much or anything. And you got to remember, we hit a lot of Oh, the miniguns off of this, we had 227 and everything. Oh, they're going out at 300-400 rounds a minute. Well, you know what a body looks like when it gets hit with about 100 rounds in 1 second. And this turns into a red mist.
Mm-hmm. And you really hadn't had any exposure to any of this kind of stuff, and then there it was, just sort of all of a sudden.
Oh, just like that. And then all of a sudden I'm being chewed out for shooting a severed head.
All right.
You're wasting ammunition. What?
Okay. So did you get where you were supposed to do and actually get to be an engineer at that point? I mean, did
Yeah.
you help?
Well, then that was the other thing that was on it. Then the first lieutenant come in and says, "Well, you're the engineer, aren't you? You know, hey trooper, you have to agree with the deal. Call us troopers over there." So he grabs me. He says, "I want the landing zone right over there." Well, I had the det cord and some of the blasting caps and everything. So I'll start. What you do on that, it was real thin trees. What you do is you wrap det cord. It was C4, only in a cord, and you drop. And where you wrap it around, wherever you wrap it the second time, that's where it blows off, and that's where the tree falls, because you can control on it. So I'm going around there. So in the meantime, the other engineers were coming down there. They had to come to me to find out what was going on. Mm-hmm. So here's a platoon sergeant and the first sergeant or first lieutenant come to me, and I'm telling them exactly what to do. Well, that didn't go over very good. So a couple of days later, bag and baggage, I went back to the headquarters company in Camp Evans.
So they felt like you were showing them up?
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know on it. They just didn't go over that well on it. And see, you got to remember too, draftees were basically a second-class citizen. You ain't going to have, and these are career armory officers on it. Well, they're not going to have some draftee, an E3, tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm. Even though you had been assigned to go do it, though, right? I mean, they had told you.
Well, but But I mean, it's not. We didn't have a confrontation at the time.
Right.
No, we just, I told them what to do, and I found out later on that. I talked to company commander and everything, and so so you're not going to work out here too well. So then when I told him, I said, don't mess up because I was going to take over. I said, that's basically what we did. Mm-hmm. Then another time we went out, because we're usually one of the first ones out in the area, especially if we're making landing zones. The combat engineers were well, just like on D-Day. Actually, combat engineers were the first ones to land the thing, take out all the the obstacles. Right. In Vietnam, we were, especially in the Air Cav, because everything was on landing zones. We were the first ones in. We blew out the area, or cleaned it out, put in the positions for the whatever artillery or mortars and everything. Then we set up the perimeters and everything on that. And the first one I went on when I was I had my own team, demolition team leader, because we had a lieutenant come in there, and we got on the ground and everything, and everybody has to work. Just because I was, at the time was a 4 or somebody's a 5 or anything. That's what I liked about the first Cav, or actually being in the U.S. Army and everything. Rank really didn't, when it gets to a point like that, it really doesn't matter, because we went out, we were a team. Everybody did have their own job. And we had demolition people, but usually what you want to do, you only want 1 or 2 people doing the demolition work, because there's only certain ways. You don't have a chance of doing too many mistakes. You only have one chance of making 1 mistake or something like that. You don't want to do that. So generally, especially in the teams I had, there was just 1 or 2 people that just did the demolition work. Everybody else did everything else, cleaned the area out. And when we set out the C4, we had all different types of what's called linear charges, and we had regular C4 bricks, and had usually det cord. That was C4, and just depended on what the situation, what you wanted, and how big it was. And to set it all off, we used 10-cap blasting machines. Never used fuses or anything like that, because wanted something. If it didn't work right away, we could go check it. If you used fuses or anything, you had to wait usually like an hour or 45 minutes and go and check the thing out. So everything was all, what we did was working all off 10-cap blasting machines. And I had to make the blasting caps. They came in a little box and about that big, and they all wrapped up with wire. Well, it took time because you had to take each individual one out, you had to take it apart, and it only took about half an amp to blow the cap off. So what you had to do is put the wires together, basically shorten it out. So the lieutenant would usually work on that. And this one told me, well, I'm an officer, I don't have to work. I said, I wouldn't be sitting around here. It was just out of OCS. I said, sir, our experience is, you're going to have to, work, I said, okay. I said, there's a tree over there, just sit down. Well, up there we had all kinds of, that was our biggest thing was snipers. But if you were a sniper and you're up on the tree and you see all these guys running around working, you see somebody sitting off to the side, who's going to be your first target? And you figure that's going to be the officer, right? Mm-hmm. So we're working all, and the way I treated snipers, I learned this this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go to OCS school, is what they call the crack and thud method. Which is? Which is, first time you never hear, no, I've always used this, and everybody I try to explain this to has never heard this thing on it. Anyway, first sound you hear is the crack of the bullet going overhead. Second sound is the rifle going off. So you put the two different together, that gives you the direction. Then you take a quick count, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that tells you how many hundreds of yards, or well, in this case, how many hundreds of meters the difference out. So you try to train your guys, because you have to count it really fast, because you want to, a lot. We were out maybe about 200 meters or something like that, or 300. And that tells you how, the direction and everything. Then when we did our pre-op in the area, I worked with the artillery. I had, when I was in OCS, I had a secret security clearance, and I could go with the division artillery, and I set up different targets on their target 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we used variable time. That's what they call Victor Tango variable time, where that's where a round goes off about 3 feet off the air. You watched the Band of Brothers when they were in the Ardennes forest. With those rounds going off, those air bursts. Mm-hmm. Well, can you imagine being the sniper? And that's how we got rid of our snipers. Okay, so basically you figured out where they were, estimated distance and direction, and then you could call in artillery? Yeah, we can call in, we called in artillery. Yeah. Then we had two M60, I always carry two M60 machine guns, and everybody gets the, when we hear, hear the shot, everybody's making the quick count. I got 2.5, I got 3, so we figure anywhere from 250 to 300 meters out. Usually that's where they were anyway. Then I get on the horn, or on for the artillery, we call it. And the way I worked that was in a battery. I like to use a 3-tube battery, and I say target 5, basically one round or one tube, a target 5, second tube or second round, one click to the left, and another, the third round maybe another up. Once we kind of cover, you get 3 rounds in the air. Usually 99% of the time it gets most of them, because they'll blow them right out of the trees. They come down, they take an M60 machine gun, one on each side, keep it 18 inches off the ground there, because usually they bounce them. We didn't even have to go clean them up. Highly specialized technique. Yeah, I know. I've talked to this, and we use this all the time, and nobody on it. So by the time you're all done, you're heading back home, so who are you bringing back in a body bag? You got a second lieutenant with a bullet in the head. All right. Let's try to go and put together your sort of sequence here. So initially, you're sent out, and
you're assigned to 1st Cav, but then 8th Engineer Battalion, you're assigned to support the 173rd Brigade.
Yeah.
And then that's where you don't fit in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're back to headquarters company?
Yeah, I came back to headquarters. The way the 8th Engineers are is with the 1st Cav, is we didn't have a brigade, because a lot of times they'll have 3 battalions to a brigade, and brigade goes in. We were the only engineering unit in the 1st Cav. It was a battalion. We had 3 maneuvering companies with the 3 brigades. Company A went with 1st Brigade, Company B went with 2nd Brigade, Company C went with 3rd Brigade. Then we had headquarters and headquarters company, and headquarters company was in general support of the whole division. So I ended up coming back. They didn't know with me. But my saving grace is when I was going to college, I was doing some computer programming. At that time we had 80-column cards. Well, the only way you could get an 80-column card is learning how to type, so I had to take a typing class. Well, in 1968, and there's no women in the unit, nobody knew how to type. And here I had all this training and everything, so I ended up basically in personnel. I basically was personnel in S3 supply. I did a lot of clerk typing. But here again, we were in general support of the whole division, so I kind of went out when they had to have a specialty for whatever reason to go out and need something right away. That's where I use it. So I always like to say I was always ended up being like a janitor. They had a job to get or something to clean up. That's what I usually ended up doing, depending on what they had to do. So I did a lot of small jobs like that.
Well, what kind of jobs or assignments would that be?
Basically starting out in, most of my time was right after the Tet Offensive. We were up at DMZ up there, and actually in the summer of '68, we had it a lot of people don't realize, we had it fairly easy. Once the Tet Offensive and Quezon was over with, our main job was to watch the Ho Chi Minh Trail on that. And actually, that's where, like I said, after the Tet Offensive, people don't realize we really actually won the war. In fact, the mentality at the time is we won the war. It's just a matter of time cleaning this thing up. Because you never, after the Tet Offensive, never heard of the Viet Cong. They basically wiped them off the face of the earth. And most of the big units all ended up like small guerrilla units. And it took them pretty much, 4 years to even mount another large attack like that again. So our main job was just to keep, we had long-range recon patrol, Rangers going out, checking out the, along the Laotian border and everything. Once in a while I get called to do a couple things. They found one time found they suspected was a prisoner holding POWs in it. We had to go clean them out, or on it, and they usually did their own demo work, but they didn't have enough people, so I just, one of these, like you call last minute jobs, went out there and helped them. And it was just a small village. We just cleaned that out, made sure everything was, got all the intel they wanted out of it, and I just kind of booby-trapped it. They did, like on a door, put a shape charger about head high, and when they flipped that thing, blow a head off. Then I took a lot of, one I liked doing was, because they always used the fireplaces, always used them again, took C4 and a chimney off to the side, run det cord and use it like a little fuse down below. When they started a fire, that thing go up there and blow the hooch up.
So you're basically going to places that the enemy had used for bases and that kind of thing, and they run away when you show up. And
well, yeah. And they supposedly it was credible intelligence that American POWs were in there. They said they needed some volunteers. I said, well, I'll do that one.
But did they find any American?
No, we didn't. As far as I know, they didn't. I think by the time I was always there, and when I talked to the guys, they said they figured they picked them up because, Even this was right after the Tet Offensive, and there was a lot of POWs, and that's what they were figuring. They're trying to work them up.
Right, move them out of the
back
area.
up to the,
okay. Well, let's back up to the Tet Offensive itself. So at the time that happens, want to tell me, where are you and what are you doing when that starts? So that's early '68. Caisson is already going at that point.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. I never knew what Caisson was. Because when we were in Camp Evans, the whole division was going to pick up and go up to the DMZ. I mean, it was about 12,000 guys. We just all picked up and all headed up north. So we were going land, sea, and air. So I was at the headquarters company at the time, and we took a convoy down to Quin Yon. That was probably about 35 miles south of us. Went down there and got onto an LST. They loaded us on one of these big LSTs. Took an LST up to Da Nang. Got off Da Nang. Took a convoy. We were going to go, I was on, we were going to go up to Camp Evans. That's 38 miles from DMZ. It was an old Marine base camp. Well, on the way up, we had to go through Way. We went through Way, and we stopped just north of it. And we were told by the battalion commander there was another convoy coming up in a day or two, and they need some guys to help them with the connexes, because they had to ship them or put them on trailers or use a different...
What's a connex?
Connex are basically these big storage units, metal storage units. On it, you see, that's like what they put on ships.
Okay.
Only they're smaller.
Okay, so smaller, but contain metal containers.
Yeah, metal container. They call them connexes and everything on there. And myself, I think there was 3 heavy equipment operators. We had a battalion barber, a couple clerks on that. So they got us on a Jeep. We went back to the MACV compound. And that was the night before the Tet Offensive on that. And we're laying around. In fact, I was going on guard duty, and that's when basically the Tet Offensive started on there.
Okay. Now, the headquarters that you're with, now is that within the city of Hue, or where
No,
is it?
there's 2 parts of Hue. The older part, where the Citadel and everything else was the old city. Just south of it, south of the Perfume River, is basically what they call new, at that time, the new Hue.
And is that where you were?
That's where I was. The MACV compound is the military advisory
Command or
command
something,
on it. And that was almost like an embassy. And in Hue, from what I found out later on, it was very lightly defended, because it was, well, they always said this was because old Hue was centuries years old. And from what I understand, there was a mutual agreement that everybody was going to try to keep that intact. So there was very little, there was only, I think, one unit, Arvin unit, that was really in charge of the area. MACV compound, it was, like I said, was more of like an embassy. It had a wall around it. There was basically a couple of buildings for offices and dormitories. Even the Australians had used that for their playing there. And the only saving grace is they had an armory in there. They used that as their base of operations when they were up in. I never worked with them, but there was a. And when we were there, we didn't even see any Australian officer or unit, but that was their headquarters. And
so basically, what happens at the point when the attack starts?
Well, I was going on guard duty, and there was 3, I believe, captain from the Air Force. They were reconnaissance planes, and they're in the old city, the airport there. They had their basically their thing. They were reconnaissance, and they were basically stationed out of there, and they stayed in the MACV compound. But like I said, different dormitories,
right,
mess halls, and everything like that.
Okay, so you're on guard duty, and what happens?
Basically, hell breaks loose on everything on there. And one of the captains, he knocks out one of the VC that was coming in, And well, you got to remember, with the MACV compound, we had a lot of intelligence officers, that type of thing, a lot of clerks, and myself and a couple of the other equipment or heavy equipment operators. That was the only thing that ever saw any combat. So that night, we got everybody all together, all surrounded what we could, got into the armory, or the Australian armory in there, and got whatever weapons we could and surrounded the whole thing, and then we basically held the thing for that night. Then
what kind of physical defenses do you have? Was the compound had a wall?
It was just a small wall. You could look over the top of it. It was, I mean, it wasn't to hold anything. It was more of a decorative wall more than anything else.
Did you have barbed wire, things like that around you? No, so it was just a
wall, and you're hanging. In order to sit on it, I mean, there was no guard posts or anything. We were just, you had to kneel down, put our bang, and and you didn't want to look over the wall that much and everything. You were,
And about how many people were attacking you initially, or just a few?
At the time, we didn't know. Actually, like we were talking about before, I knew it was bad, but till afterwards, I really didn't know how bad it was. But the people we had on it, they had sapper units and everything around there on it.
So I guess basically so what was the initial indication something was happening? Did the
Oh yeah, no, one of the guard or gunny sergeants went up, take a look around, see what was going on. He got a bullet in the head. Yeah, like I said, it didn't take too long to figure things were going. You got to remember, at that time, we knew something might happen, because even we were at Christmas. When I was in Bong Song, we were on guard duty. They doubled the guards because they knew something. There was some, like they say, credible intelligence. Something big was going to happen.
Yeah.
Even in Bong Song, because I can remember on Christmas Eve, I was sitting behind an M60 machine gun, listening, swung up there. They had a chopper up there with Christmas carols.
Okay. All right. So the sergeant gets shot or whatever, and is that sort of the first warning there was something?
Oh, pretty much, yeah, on that. Yeah,
but then
the first night actually, the first wave came in, we pushed them back, and there was kind of like a lull. But over in the old city, you could hear. I mean, we could hear what was going on. They weren't all just coming for us.
Right.
It was going off the whole city, mainly in the old city on there. And you could hear all the civilians yelling, screaming, all the gunfire, everything going on over there. But we didn't, like I said, we didn't know what was going on exactly at that time. The next morning, talked to one of the gunny sergeants, the Marine gunny sergeants, and he was kind of white, and he was, I think he knew more what was going on because they had the communications at that time. I think they knew by that time, by say 8, 9 o'clock that next morning, I think they had a pretty good idea, but they weren't disseminating on that to us. And I was talking to one gunny sergeant, and I said, "Well, how bad is it, or what? What's going on?" He says, "Well, we're going to, I thought we were going to have to defend the area," and he says, "No, we're going to have to go across the street where the buildings out there, because that's where the snipers or all the NVA and VC were going." He says, "To protect ourselves, we're going to have to go and clear these areas out."
So what kind of force did you have to go do that with?
That's what I told you. There was about 200 of us, and nobody had that kind of combat experience, and nobody had street fighting or urban experience or anything on that. So we had to do it by, on it. And so at that time I was, E3, or was it 4? I think I just was 4. Anyway, so they put one of the heavy equipment operators, he was an E6. This Sergeant James, he was an E6. "You're in charge, he wants you to go out and clear that building out." He goes, "I'm a heavy equipment operator." He was a black guy, and he just went white on me. And I told the sergeant, I was don't worry about it. I said, oh, when I was in OCS, they gave us a short, one of the things we had to go through was how to take a fortified position. And the only thing I remember back then, like they gave it to it like World War II, you never went through a door and you never went through a window. Because that's where you go kick a door down or something, well, there's going to be a guy with a machine gun on the back end of it. And these were like two-story flat big window on it. Well, I went into the armory there. Fortunately, they had some claymore mines and some grenades. And they also had 12-gauge sawed-off shotguns with military loads. Because 16s ain't, I realized that because if a sniper or NVA come out and you were there, I try to shoot him or whatever, it came between us, I could shoot, would also hit you on that. And that's why I said, let's grab these 12-gauge shotguns. I didn't know what a 12-gauge with a military. I used shotguns before, but I didn't know how powerful these were until we started using it. And he says, they started kicking down doors and everything. Marines took one side, and we took on one side of this, and the other side of the street. I says, well, we're not going to start kicking on doors. So what I did is went up to the top, to the roof, took grenades and claymores, blew a hole in the roof, jumped down there, blew a hole, dropped a grenade down there, then dropped down in there, cleaned out the room there, took the shotgun, blew a hole inside the walls on the other side, and threw a grenade and kind of worked our way down. Actually, that worked out really well because they said that they didn't realize what we were going to do on it, and we really surprised them because from what I understand later on, they were training to do this. The Viet Cong and everything, months before, they had everything had all the equipment, all this stuff, and they were training. They were waiting for us to come in. On that. So we ended up putting M60s on each side as we were jumping out the windows and everything. And that's how we cleaned them out. So after the first day, we came back, and the Marines, they were all shot up and everything. I never lost a guy. Well, we came back and we got it cleaned out again. Then the trouble is, then we came back in, we had to stand guard again, so everybody was on the walls all night long.
And did they try to attack the compound, or? No,
not really. The problem was here again was the snipers. Basically, we owned the area. At daytime, and at night we came.
So they weren't bringing in a large unit trying to just storm the place.
No, I didn't get the thing on there. I think what they were more interested in. I think what they, retrospect, I think they thought they could run us over the first night, and they couldn't.
So there was no plan B.
There was no plan B. You got to remember, that's what I always found about the NVA were. They were very, very regimented. They did this, they did that. Even when they went to attack an outpost, they practice it and practice it and practice it, and this is the way they went into a form or a V, whatever. And that's what I found out. If you could break up that formation up, or whatever they were doing, that's where you could get your edge from. And I think that's what we did that night, on that, or the next couple of days, because it took, before we were relieved, I think it was 3 or 4 days. Before a regular Marine unit came up and came up the roads to. So we did this for about 3 days.
So basically, you're attacked at night. The next day, you go out, you chase them out of the building. You go after.
I had to do this. Not only this time, we didn't have to blow the wall.
But then after, do you go out again to do the same thing? So you're trying to clear out the area.
Because like I said, then we didn't have enough force to hold them, so we had to go back in the MACV compound. They said, well, we'll just hold what we can till we get relief, till we get some reinforcements. Well, everybody else, and from Da Nang all the way up, in my unit itself, I found out later, they went up to Camp Evans. And at Camp Evans, they were just out in a big field. And that, on that, they didn't even have any wire out at the time when the Tet Offensive started. But the only fortunate thing was for them, the NVA didn't realize that what was happening at the time. But then that's what happened with Quang Tri, and they were trying to get with Khe Sanh and everything. That was a whole different scenario basically at the same time.
Now when you do get relieved, I mean, who shows up first? Or?
The Marines. I don't,
Okay.
they always kind of laugh. They always took credit for anything up there anyway, so we might as well give them credit.
So they did that, and then once that's over, now do you finally get to go back to your battalion or what?
No, actually we fought our way out of it because you got to remember that lasted about 3 weeks on there. About, boy, that's hard to say. About 3 or 4 weeks. No, I mean 3 or 4 days into it, we're still doing this, even with the Marines in there. We were just kind of backing them up a little bit, and they said, well, you take this area, or, and that. And Sergeant James and I, one time, we were, we got in this one building, went through the roof and everything on that, and after a while, they were, the NVA were kind of getting an idea of what we were doing by coming through the roofs and everything on that. And especially the hard part, we could always clear the top floor, but the second floor on it, so we were throwing grenades down the steps. Well, you hear a metal grenade going down, you could hear it. So the grenade would go off, and they wait, and then they jump out. And we were playing these cat and mouse games and everything. And well, this one house, it was a 2-story house. We went down through it. We were cleaning out. Got 2 of the guys, 2 NVA or VC, and we found them in a closet. That's what I liked about the shotguns and everything. We could clean out the closet pretty good, with all the clothes and everything on it. And we knew that somewhere downstairs, and we said, well, I don't want to throw a grenade down there. You could tell somebody if somebody's walking down a stairway, and if you throw a grenade down, you could tell, you could hear the grenade going down. So we got one of these dead gooks. He said, I'll just throw them down there, and we'll follow them down. I said, no, since I had a grenade, I said, that's one of the biggest mistakes I made. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and this is probably one of the biggest ones. So I opened up the bottom of his pajamas and put the grenade down there. We threw them down there. So, yeah, we cleaned it out. And we were, we found out too is with one of the things with a 12 gauge shotgun is they're hard to load because they have 4 or 5 rounds, and you have to do it individually instead of putting a clip in there. So by the time we got down to the bottom, we already were out of ammunition. We only had a couple of them, so we ended up doing the hand-to-hand fighting. And Sergeant James was probably a little bigger than I was, and I think he'd pick them up, he'd slam them down, and what I'd do is I'd kick the bottom jaw up into the sinuses and take the heel and push the nose back into it on that. And we were all covered with blood and body fluids and everything. And the guys on the outside just couldn't believe what was going on. I said, we heard about it later. I said, why didn't you guys come in and help us? They said, well, we never knew what you were. You hear all this fighting up on top, and all of a sudden it's downstairs, and you hear the grenades going off. And we just kind of sat around and started looking at each other, and all we could do was just start laughing. And there's no way to get cleaned up either. We had to go back to that MACV compound, even take showers and everything on that. We looked at each other, and I said, we got to get ourselves out of here. And there was at that time only one way out. That was through the Perfume River. They had these LCUs. I don't know if you know what they're little landing crafts.
Okay.
On it. They're a little bigger than the landing crafts they used in Vietnam for landing on it, but they were smaller than the big LSTs were to bring on it. And they had 2 20-millimeter cannons on each side. And for the longest time, that was the only way out, because you could. That was another thing we did when we were at the MACV compound, the south of it. That's what, as like I said, 8th Engineers, we opened up landing zones and everything. We couldn't get the wounded out, because like I said, basically they controlled the area in the daytime, or we did in the daytime. At night we had to go back in there, and we were just by the Perfume River, and just south of there. We opened up a little landing zone. We couldn't bring in, they had anti-aircraft all the way around it. So we couldn't bring in Chinooks, it was just enough to get in a Huey. So they can bring in some supplies in, then that's how we got most of the wounded out at the time. And these LCUs would be coming in they had an LC ramp on there, and that's how we were getting supplies in and out. And we basically literally had to fire away. We got ourselves into one of these, our whole unit into LCU that was going out. There was two boats that were going out, and we ended up on each side was weapons or M16s or M60s and everything on that, and literally went out the Perfume River. We ended up in Dung Ha, that's just up by the DMZ. That was a port up there, and that was north of Quang Tri. Then we had to come down to Q01, and that's how I got back into Camp Evans.
Okay. Now, in order to do that, basically, did you have to get permission from the MACV commanders or something like that, or you just decided one day you were going to go?
We just looked at each other and said, we're getting ourselves out of here.
Okay. So you just walked right on
oh, wow, we
landing
kind of
raft.
said, once we got the landing zone and everything, and we just, so we just got to get out of it.
So you'd sort of done whatever job an engineer could do at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, we didn't get permission. They knew we were going. Well, what was that? Like I said, we had 3 Air Force captains. They were with us, and they had their reconnaissance. Well, they knew they couldn't get to their thing, and one of these guys, we've got to get back in the fight, and they had to get out. They were trying to get up to Da Nang, back in Da Nang. So that's basically the only way out. By that time, more of the Marines were coming in, so they were, on it. They really didn't need us as a unit. In fact, I don't think they wanted us to be in a unit anyway. But I mean, that was like I said, the first 3 or 4 days was probably till they got the relief columns up in there. That was it.
All right.
And that's when we really started finding out how things were really bad. And that's what got me more at night, because when we were sitting there, you could hear all the fighting that was going on. Then we found out that they were executing all the counter-revolutionaries on that. I found out later they were finding graves with 3,000. You could hear that all going on. We didn't know what was exactly going on, but you can sit behind that wall, knew what was going on, but you couldn't do nothing about it.
Right.
That were a lot of
Now, did the Marines who came into the compound relief, did they tell you what they saw on the way in?
Yeah. We had one that came in from more of the south and different villages, and that's what he said. It was just bizarre. He says there were so many severed heads. And when they come down through this one village, he said they had kids in there 10, 12 years old, kicking them around like they were softball or soccer balls on that. So, and people around here worry about a little thing. Can you imagine kids 10, 11, 12 years old doing that? I mean, it was, and their whole families were alive. They said families and everything. They were just taking those smaller villages and just wiping them right out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that one loses track of sometimes is the communists were not very nice people.
No, they weren't. No,
they had a very, very harsh policy.
That's why I always say, if you ever saw the movie We Were Soldiers, that first scene, not only was that the enemy we were facing at the time, because anybody that was coming in to that valley wasn't coming out alive, and we're finding out that was the same thing with us with the MACV compound, because we had a sapper battalion, a couple of sapper battalions out there. Nobody was going to come out alive. So, yeah, they weren't.
They weren't kidding.
No, they weren't at all.
Now, you finally make it back to your unit. Did you get any particular kind of reception, or it was just, oh, okay, you're back now?
No, that was really kind of interesting, because when we went back, then the 3rd Brigade was going back to relief. They were on the west side of Way at the time. So the other guys that were with me and everything, they went back to their own unit. Their heavy equipment operators and went back to S3, or supply clerk. So I went to the tactical operation, and we were being debriefed and everything. So their idea was, well, you know what Way is like, right? And everything on that. So I ended up with the 5th or the 7th Cav. Go talk to, I forgot what, they had a for S2 or intelligence guy there and everything. And so I went back to back to Way. They were west of there, and they wanted me. They thought I knew all about Way and everything like that. I didn't know nothing of it. You showed me a map of it. I mean, I knew maybe a couple blocks or
Yeah,
anything on that,
yeah.
but they thought I was more expert at it than what they were, so I was more, went in kind of like an advisor type of thing, and they were trying to find a different, figure out a place to put a landing zone, more fire bases in there, and I was there with them. I worked around with them for a couple months, or not a couple of months, but a couple of days and everything. We ended up in one of the, I think, the gates on the northwest side, and yeah, that was another kind of interesting thing. We were bringing in artillery, because at that time, this was towards the end. This was like around, I would say, the 20th or so of February, and we couldn't get any artillery support, and one of the guys somehow got a hold of a naval artillery coordinator. And at that time, the NVA were chaining all the people to their posts and everything. There was, well, they had these small alleyways. Like I said, there was two big tall buildings, two-story buildings. And we called in for one round for spotting at the time, and when you call it in, then the last thing you hear is shot out. That means the shot's on the way. So we're sitting there and waiting. It's 20 seconds. I think. Sure, he said shot out. Yeah. All of a sudden you hear is thump, 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 thump. Here it comes. What is that? I never heard anything like that. Well, the round came around, hit the top of the roof of one building. You could hear a crunch, crunch, cracking, came out, landed in between the alleyway. By the time the explosion, both buildings were both flat. I thought, boy, this is good, fire for effect, on it. And we were cleaning out this basically a block there. And I had this Marine major coming up talking. We saw him come up and talk to the battalion commander. And all of a sudden he's yelling at us, stop, hold, put a hold. I said, what do you mean, on it? And the lieutenant I was working with at the time there, we were trying to coordinate this all together. And he says, this Marine major says we have to, have to stop and desist with everything we were doing in there. He says this was way. It was the ancient city of Indochina at the time. We're destroying it. We can't do that anymore.
Okay.
Well, what do you mean? I said they were chaining on it. So. So they had to get them all together, and then I basically had to show them how to. This is what we did. How to, like I said, nobody knew how to do any street fighting at the time.
Okay. So basically, the idea was they were under orders not to destroy the buildings and at least to
they didn't care
them.
what we did with them, but they did, because we were by that time we were in the ancient city. That was the old city,
right.
On there. We were getting up near the Citadel and everything like that. And they want to try to keep that much intact. And this was even like I think around the 20th of February. They were still trying to save the city. I was going,
yeah.
By that time, it was just a disaster.
Yeah.
And that's what I was kind of getting. I've been kind of researching it, for this interview. Like I said, the only way we were getting any supplies in safely was from these LCUs going up and down the Perfume River. Because you couldn't use the airstrip. There was all kinds of anti-aircraft around it. They mined the roads every night, even Highway 1 and all the other mines and everything. And this was when Walter Cronkite was supposed to make his famous singing way. And I've been trying to get on the internet, YouTube there, and I can't find it. I only saw it one time. And of course, being in Way, I was always looking in the back of the picture on there, and I said, I wonder where he was in the Way. If he was in the old part or the old, the new part. I could never recognize it. And I had this. The only way to go in, like I said, with these LCUs is the safe way. And I was always thinking, there's no way they're going to let Walter Cronkite go up and down that Perfume River in that LCU. So I don't think he ever was in Way at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was. I'd heard of him being in Saigon, but not necessarily in a way.
I think he was in a way, but what they call way fu bai. Because they always said he was, in a way, and if you'll really look at it, and there was really no way, safe way in for a civilian or on that to get in there. Well, I gave you one of the that PowerPoint presentation. I found on YouTube there was a British film crew that guy. That was the only way. That's all I found. I kind of figured out that was the only way they could get in there. And I was showing them shooting the twin 20s and everything on there. And I said, "There's no way he could get in there at that time on that." So
All right.
Yeah, it is really bizarre.
Yeah. So you kind of really got into the middle of things there in that.
Well, then it even got worse than that afterward. Then when we finished the 5th to the 7th, we finally got our convoy, so we convoyed back up to Camp Evans, everything on that. Then that's when the Shau Valley started. They wanted to clean that out. Well, since I did all this other things, so they wanted me to be the first one in. They called what was called Signal Hill to go into. They said, well, April 1st, this was the perfect time to get into the Shau Valley and everything. You have to go with the 13th Signal Battalion. They set up. They wanted to set up the communications and everything. Well, by the time we were coming in there, the fog was coming in too. On that, this was the middle of the monsoon season. Well, towards the end, but it was still the monsoon season on that. So I got caught in that too a little bit. Then we finally got on the floor, or into the valley. There was just a bombed out airstrip and everything. We found 2 Russian bulldozers, and we worked on that. We used cannibalized one, got the other one going. There was a couple of trucks in there. I think there were Russian trucks and everything. I was able to use that. We were just starting to get the airstrip up, and they brought in basically a replacement, so a fresher group were in there, another platoon in there. They took us back out. And I was back in the TOC again, and at this time, Quezon was still pretty much going on. That's when, I think it was Operation Pegasus was starting up. And they wanted me to go to this place called LZ Peanuts. I don't what's LZ Peanuts? And that was just south and west of Quezon. And I didn't, like I said, I never even heard of Quezon at this time and everything. So they had it was a Marine artillery base, and they had credible intelligence. Again, the thing was going to be overrun. They were having, he said, they were almost overrun a couple other times. Apparently there was a special forces unit, or I think a village around the area that was overrun prior to that.
Yeah, because there had been one outside of Quezon that did fall,
And LZ Peanuts was just west of there, and they needed some help on there. At that time, like I said, it was a military thing, but eventually I think the CAV took it over while another unit took it over anyway. So we got in there and went to the gunny sergeant, and he said, I said, and this thing sits on a little bit of a kind of a hill. I said, this is probably the most piss poor place to put out. Because usually we like it flat so you can sit out, your fields of fire, everything on, that type of thing. And, he says, we're a fire support base for Quezon. I thought, what the hell's Quezon? Well, I never even all this going on, because you don't know what's going on in my little...
You had been a little bit busy.
Yeah, we were busy, I didn't know what Quezon was going on. And they said, we're in a fire support. I said, well, that didn't mean that much to me anyway. So we had to do the, what we call the green zone, security for the base. And Marines always they use these bouncing betties where they go up on it. I always like to use claymore mines, everything on it. And they strung their barbed wire or whatever you want to call it, everything all in straight lines. Well, I never liked to do that because I always said these guys always like to go, like to break up a formation. They either come in a V or on. And sapper. There was 3 or 4 sapper battalions up there, and a makeup of a sapper battalion is basically, they call them, I think, cells, or I call them ways. The first one was a penetrator. Sapper is just basically a suicide mission, there, a kamikaze type of operation, and all they are just, they had just dressed up in, or they put black soot over them because they're coming at night. They had their little boxer shorts, their little helmets on, and first wave was what's called a penetrator. They came in with Bangalore torpedoes to blow the wire and everything up. And usually the next couple of waves were the attack waves, and they had usually carried a sidearm with them, either an AK-47 RPG round, and they had probably 8 pounds of satchel charges, one on each side. And that's basically what we had, stop. We were trying to stop. And the fourth wave, well, I never got them. Fortunately, they never got to it. It was basically the back. They came in with the heavy machine guns and the mortars and everything, more or less, when they take over the base camp or whatever they're going to take over. And usually when they come in, they usually come in either a V shape or head on, depending on how they do it. And they'll sit and they practice these things till they get it down perfect. So my idea was to break it up a little bit. So what I did, instead of making the fences or the barbed wire fences in a straight line, I funnel them in on that. Then I put my claymore mines in basically like an ambush, either an L shape, where you put it on one side and you put 2, 3 of them right in front, so that basically you stop them in front and you blow the sides on, get them on the side. And what we did is set those up, and we camouflaged them. We took old sandbags and everything that had the color and everything on it. We break those up and we put them on the sides, put them on a rock, and come up with these sandbags. So when they came in, we funneled them all in. So basically they were up in a straight line. Well, they come in a straight line, then we fired the ambush off. And what we would do is I'd shoot the first one off in the front. That would stand them up on it. And you got to remember, C4 blasts at 25,000 feet per second. That's 5 miles in 1 second. And you got, these claymores have got ball bearings, hundreds of ball bearings that big. So you're getting somebody that's, if you've ever seen what happened to somebody after claymore goes on, when we go up to clean them up, the front, all that's usually left is just the front shell, because the round's going in that big and it's coming out that big. And you can flip them over and the whole back sides of them are just gone. So the idea was to we put a delay on one, about 1/10 of a second. That would stand them up, and the other one would just blow them out. So you got all this body fluids and everything going up. Then we made our own food gas, our own napalm, and we put them in 55-gallon drums. We mixed jet fuel with stuff like Knox gelatin, get a reel on that, and blow that off at the same time. So that would set them up on that, and then we have the food gas come over the top of them. And I got it on that PowerPoint presentation. You can see where there, you can see the whole areas were all, and it was all burned off. So that basically you didn't even have to clean up afterwards, because can you imagine all that body fluid and everything? That was why I would like to say is when Robert Duvall says, well, he'd like the smell of napalm in the morning. Well, we always like the smell of burning bodies at night, because that means we could go to sleep at night.
How long did you stay out there at this LZ Peanuts place?
Not very long.
Sort of long enough to do the job?
Well, yeah, that was basically our job, and that's what we did. Then we come back home. We'll go back to on it. Then I forgot what our artillery unit would come in there and take over on it.
Now, after that, were you you get to the phase where things have quieted down a little bit? Because you were saying that eventually...
The summer of I would say from about May on was, actually pretty easy. Because our main job, like I said, was from then on was to stop the traffic coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. which was that's what I said. After the Tet Offensive and everything, you got to realize, everybody thought the war was pretty much over with, because you never heard of a Viet Cong unit or anything on it. We basically wiped them off the face of the earth. Any of the big NVA units were basically, that what left was nothing much more than a guerrilla unit. And there were still a lot of, they were trying to resupply coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I went out, basically, like I said, I was like a kind of kin to them. I was a janitor. Anything they had to have a special, cleaned up or anything. I usually ended up, I had my own demo teams and everything. We'd go up and basically do whatever. I had to rework a landing zone if they wanted to make it bigger or, whatever. Even around the camp itself, because Camp Evans itself at the time was relatively small. Then it was division headquarters, and it was basically just getting bigger and bigger. And our areas, airfield had to be reworked. The perimeters had to be expanded and everything. We did a lot of that work. A lot of landing zone work. That usually they go out for an operation. So that was nice about the first Cav, because you'd have a landing zone going out, but the guys that were going out always had 3 or 4 fire bases that were supporting them. So we were building up all these. Because a lot of times we'd go in there, they would only last 2 or 3 days. They clean it all up, and you go someplace else. Put out a landing zone or a thing, bring in 3 or 4 tubes of artillery or mortars. They're there a week or two, they close it up, and it was one of those. Yeah, actually, we were quite successful. I was talking to one of our intelligence, S2 there. This was probably towards the end of, probably August or September there. He said, yeah, the operations were going good. They were figuring for every 1,000 troops that were coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, especially in the I-Corps area, they were figuring 800 were dead within 30 days. The other 200 or so probably wish they were. So it was really quite successful. Well, like I said, they took them almost 3 or 4 years just to even come back. Anything to bring a big enough force down. So basically, I don't know what kind of forces they were bringing down. I don't know if they were more of a VC unit or if they were NVA units, but I don't know what kind of units they were.
Well, they were rebuilding in different parts of the country,
at the time, yeah.
But yeah, it did. But they couldn't. And so they would operate in various areas and make life difficult for people. But yeah, they were generally not launching, the large scale.
No, there was nothing large scale. Yeah, we didn't have anything like the Tet Offensive or anything like that. Everything was really, really small, time.
During the time when you were over there, did you ever get any leave time or R&R?
Yeah, I went to Bangkok, once on that,
Okay. And how did they organize that or work that?
For us, that was basically, we were allocated. That's why I kind of got involved a little bit, because I worked with S1, because ended up more of because I know how to type. So I ended up more, when I wasn't working out in the field, I came back to the area and I helped them type up orders and did that. And one of the things we did was R&R type of things, making rosters, and basically got an allocation every month for places like Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Australia, Bangkok, Hong Kong, I forgot.
And Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, for Hawaii, usually it was anybody that was married. I went back to Hawaii. There was nobody single. Usually everybody that was married or anything all went back to Hawaii. That was.
Yeah, their wives could come out to Hawaii.
Yeah,
and meet
why not, and everything else, and all the single, which was probably about 90% of people all went elsewhere. I went to Bangkok, and you had a one in-country R&R. Yeah, it was just for about 3 or 4 days. Then that was, I actually ended up, by the time we took the R&R and travel time, that ended up almost 10 days, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you could play it out, you could get 2 weeks out of it. And what would happen is you get an allocation every month. Then they went basically on seniority, not so much by rank, but by seniority. And you signed up, and whoever, you just basically kept on that list and everything on it.
So what did it feel like to get out of Vietnam for a few days?
Oh, that was bizarre. Especially in Bangkok. That was just, we go out, first thing we did, in fact, I went with Sergeant James. This guy I was in away. He wanted to go together. This is, you got to remember, this is in '68. He's black. Here's a white and black guy. We're buddies. Go. And well, we didn't room together. We had rooms on, each other on it. And we went to the movies. We went to different places. Did different tourist things around. And we did all that together. And we went out to dinner a couple times. These fancy. That was really bizarre. Then they have these. That's what I got a kick out of. These food vendors going around. And all we had was sea rations and Spam. We had Spam every which way you could think of, breaded, boiled, barbecued, you name it. And we're going around eating off all these things, and the other guys, with us and everything. Well, that might be meat or monkey meat or something. We didn't care. Yeah. It was beef. It was something on that. And what I liked was the fresh fruit. We went around and got pineapple. And they had the regular sugar. It was really coarse, but it had a little bit of cinnamon. You dip that in that. Oh, and that was vine ripened. Man, we thought we were in seventh heaven on that. Then even when we went to the movies, they were even, so I had cold beer, I had beer. Even at these movies, they had regular theaters with regular American movies there at the time. And you could buy the Thai beer. They sold it by the quart, ice cold. And I forgot what it was really high proof. It was like 12, 13, 14% on that. And like I said, we when we first went in there, or in our hotel, we hired ourselves for a couple bucks a day, or like 10, 20 bucks a day. You can get a cab driver. Right. And we had our own cab driver take us all over the place on it.
Yeah, and then you have to go back.
Yeah. Well, actually, that was pretty, because when I went on R&R, that was, I think, towards the end of May, and that was where everything was just kind of going down. And I stayed primarily with at that time in the summertime was S1, and I did a lot of oddball things on that. In fact, we did one of the things that was kind of interesting. We never got to use it. Was they were. Because I had a secret security clearance. I was working in S1 and S2, while the Tactical Operations Center. The division was making contingency plans for invading the north, Hanoi, on that. And the object of that, I think, was the CAV, the 1st Marine Division. I don't know if it was any part of I think the backup was going to be the 100. Anyway, was the 101st Airborne Division. But the idea was they wanted 100% air superiority. So that means we had to knock out every SAM missile site between the DMZ and Hanoi on that. So we were getting pictures of how they set up these SAM missile sites and everything. That was one of the things they did, was they sent in they wanted, well, what it is, there's a rail system that they had on it. They had the radar system set up. They had a place for their hoocher for the barracks. Then they had their mess halls and everything. They had it pretty well set up. But the idea was, for the SAM missile sites, they had them on rail systems, so they set up to the launchers, and, on there. Well, they want to know how to destroy them. You can't go in and bomb it, because then you need a bomb assessment thing on it. Our idea is, if we went in there, one demolition team had to knock out 2 SAM missile sites the first day. Anything on it. So they wanted to get a picture or an idea how these things were developed, or how they were made and everything. Because the idea is you wanted to blow the welded seams. Because if you blow the anything that is bolted together, these guys would take a little file and they'd they hand make their own nuts and try to put the best thing back together again. So they got a Ranger unit, and I want to be CB, another. I can't remember. They had all different special names. Their PSYOPs basically what they amounted to. So they found a one of the closer SAM missile sites. They went in there and destroyed that thing, and they took a bunch of pictures. We came back in there. We made mock-ups and basically. So
they went into North Vietnamese territory to go attack them?
That's one of the things that's never supposed to happen.
Yeah, that was
one of those.
Like we never went to Laos.
Yeah, I
we never
was
went to
say
Cambodia.
because you weren't supposed to go over well, the only way to really find out
Right.
was actually destroy one.
Right.
So they had to go in, and then they went in and took the pictures, and we ended up building a mock-up and everything, trying to figure out how to do it. And it was kind of interesting. We were basically, that's what we thought, well, if they were going to do that, that's going to be the end of the war. Because by the time you knock out Haiphong Harbor, you got into Hanoi and everything. And the idea was we were supposed to knock out all the SAM missile sites. That gave you 100% air superiority. And the 1st ARVN Division could walk in the way and basically take it over. Well, that never really come to was it October, end of October '68. That's when Johnson stopped bombing the north, and I think that see, this is what happened was Walter Cronkite. All this thing, we didn't know all this stuff was going back in there, and that was the presidential election and the whole 9 yards. That's when I don't think I even knew Johnson wasn't even going to run again on that, because we didn't get that much information back even from the states at the time.
Yeah, so it was all
and we were already like, this war's all going. Man, we go up, take over the north, and man, by Christmas time we could.
Yeah.
we could be all going home type of thing. Yeah. And all of a sudden Johnson decided to stop the bombing. Then all of a sudden we got orders, we're heading south. They took the whole division, the whole 1st Air Cav, and headed down to Phoc Vinh, down south of, or down by Saigon. We were going to be a buffer force between Saigon and Cambodia.
All right. And then not too long after that, your tour is up, isn't it?
That was November, and I was pretty much on it.
On your way home.
Yeah.
Now, did you do much of anything when you got down south, or
no, not that. Was pretty much.
You just move and then you get kind of shipped back.
Yeah, because I went out middle of around the 15th of November, and I think we were like the 20th or so of October. We were all getting ready to head back. That took us a couple days, and then the 101st came in. Took our area over, and we the 1st Cav were police engineers were down by Phoc Vinh. I was down there. That was really strange too, because when we were up by Camp Evans, we were out in the middle of nowheres. If you look at, I had some pictures of Camp Evans. You don't see any guard towers around. That was a pretty good size camp at the time. We go down to Phoc Vinh. There's roads around the place, fences, guard towers, and for whatever reason they had a minefield going right between Phoc Vinh and everything. I said, why would you cut yourself off, on there? That was one of the first things when the Cav went in there. They took out that minefield in there on that. And here I'm watching all these people running around. I said, well, this is and we never had, like most units, I didn't realize this afterwards, most units had a lot of civilians do their thing. We never did. We were out in the middle of nowhere. Even when we were in Bong Song, we never had, the 1st Cav never had civilian help on it. We'd bring them in, help with the roads or do some of the things, but we pack them up. We basically shipped them all out. We never, I know when we were in An-Khe, that was another thing, but that was more of a big fortified position. We were used to, but when we were out in the field, we never had civilians. Well, basically, in my demo teams, we never. That's why I learned in Wyatt. You never took prisoners. you took standing orders were you took a prisoner, you took care of it, because if it escaped, you had to go after it, because they know who you are, what you were doing, how many, like I said, what kinds of weapons they had. If I had that kind of information, on an NVA unit, at least you know how to do something with it. So we never took any prisoners. And number two is we had nobody to take care of them either, especially during the Tet Offensive.
Yeah. And you were certainly that low.
Well, yeah, you couldn't. I mean, you were outnumbered 8. You got to figure if you're outnumbered 8-1, you're being outrun. You got to waste the first 4 or 5 people because you got 3 more coming right behind them.
Now, were you ever in a setting where you had a civilian population around you?
That was the first time, basically.
Yeah.
Well, when we were on K, that was always considered a rear area on it. And when I was in English, that was the first time. That was kind of for us. We were on the 8th Engineers was on the outside of the perimeter, and we had some of the civilians do our laundry. We had the big concertina wire, so we had our bags and everything. We'd wrap it up, throw it over the thing there. They come back the next day. We'd put the money in the stone, throw it over, and they throw the clean laundry back over to us. I was like, there was no laundry facilities or anything on that. We just wore the stuff till it rotted off, went to a supply and got new clothes on.
All right. Okay, so then at what point do you get the orders to tell you to go home?
Well, I was in Fogvin. That's what you would call your DERO state.
Right.
I was working in S1, so I didn't have any problem there. In fact, I cut my own orders to go back.
All right. And then now, once you got back to the States, did you get discharged right away, or did you have to go to a base, or what happened?
No, I came back to Fort Lewis. Went right back to, I went to Cameron Bay, got discharged on there, and flew into Fort Lewis. We got in there, this was in November '68, and it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. They told us, well, we could wait till the next morning, or they work 24 hours a day. He says, or you guys can start processing out right away. Hey, we've been sleeping for 24 hours. We're ready to go. So I was out pretty much the next day. We didn't have, like I said, well, by the time we went through processing, got our checks, or for finance and everything. Pretty much got our orders to go. In fact, they made a whole set of Class A uniforms for us, just in that less than 24 hours and everything. As long as we were in our Class A's and everything, had our orders, they gave us took us a bus right to the airport.
Okay. All right. Now, at this point, so we've gotten to the point where we've sent you back to the States. Before we go further with that. Are there other particular things about the time you spent in Vietnam, or the experiences that kind of stand out in your memory that you haven't brought into the story yet?
Oh, well, there was one of the things we had to do, I thought was really quite, I got a call one time as on this pacification of, they were taking villages and trying to relocate them, because this is more when I was down in English in the Bong Song area. Was one of the last things, or one of the things we were doing before we moved. I got a call from, headquarters there, got a call from a bunch of MPs. They were, taking down a village, or basically relocating, but then what they do is they take them in helicopters, drop them off to a point, and we had to, because there were VC in there. We had to try to separate out VC, basically not bringing in any weapons or anything. Yeah. Then they moved to another place like that. Well, they were bringing in, they had a squad, probably 8, 10 MPs. Well, they thought it was just a small village. This was a little bigger than what they had, and they were getting overwhelmed with all these people. And of course, they're pissed off. They're moving. I mean, they're extremely hostile and everything. And you have to search each individual person, basically, pat them down. You think it's bad getting on an airplane today, being strip searched, just trying to get on an airplane. Now with X-ray, we had to physically search them all. Men, women, children, I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have a honor. So he called me up or called us up and said, well, we need some help here on it. And there was nobody else around, and so they took me and a bunch of other guys, and what we did, we took some concertina wire. We put them in a concertina, just the rolled wire, just to hold them. And we took claymore mines because they were having problems. They were trying to rush them. They didn't like that. And well, they didn't want to shoot them. Anything. Most of them were civilians, but you know who's a civilian and who isn't. That's a problem over Vietnam there. You know, you didn't know who was who on it until they kind of search them out a little bit. And that's what I found out was MPs. They profiled really well. They knew how. They were trained on how to kind of what to look for and what a VC was, or you know.
Did they have any Vietnamese military assisting them or
No.
anything like that? They were just doing this on their own?
We were, at this time, we were just doing they tried to get some in. They had an interpreter, but usually they were our own interpreters that were in there. There wasn't a regular, you know, because they basically didn't trust them. Even the ones that come from the intelligence, they wouldn't even trust those guys. So we had our own, basically, each unit, battalion had their own interpreters, and that's doing that. And it was like a group. They had our own interpreters. They had medics, because some people were having health issues and that type of thing, everything on it. But there were so many people, they didn't, you know, you try to stay back, you know, they just didn't want to get overwhelmed. So we brought in some rolled concertina wire. So we just made a big circle. They had, well, we call them pins, but sections on it. They roll it up, and they had gates in it. And it was just a temporary one, just to hold them in, because you had to check them out on that. They gave them clothes and food and everything. Then they segregate them whatever the way they wanted. You know, these were the VC units, or maybe possible, or you know, that type of thing. And this was one's going to be shipped out. They brought the Chinooks in, brought these people. You know, the Arvins pretty much control that, but we were bringing them in. We wanted to, you know, pretty much do that ourselves on that. So what we did is just put a big circle, put them in there, and then we put claymore mines, because they knew what claymore mines were. We made them pretty much on that, and so we bring them in through a gate, and one or two of the MPs would strip down to their thing, because what they do, they grab anything they could on you. If you had a weapon or anything, that's the first thing they grab. So we get one or two of the bigger MPs, they strip them down to the waist and everything. They go around, check them, and you'd be surprised what we found and where they found it. But like I said, then I asked him, how do you know what's the VC and everything? He said, basically, you know, that's where he kind of learned to do a little bit of profiling. He said, you got to watch them. They just keep there and kind of watching, look in their eyes if they kind of go around, you know, sign, yeah. Kind of like to talk to you, I think. So you got an interpreter over here, you know, and that's when the MPs would kind of do the initial interrogation. And a lot of times when I was there, it was kind of interesting. A guy come up, VC, and the guy go, VC. Well, the MP said, well, you got to kind of watch it, because these groups, you know, while they're neighbors, but a lot of times they're a family in the group. They don't like each other. He says you got to kind of. He says you can't just because one guy says he's VC. You got to say you know. I said don't yank him out or anything. But when somebody else comes and says he's VC and everything, so they interrogate him. So there were quite a few VC on that. And there was one time they put them in the pens and everything, and we had, like I said, MPs and everything, and there was a big commotion going off in one area and everything on that. And he goes over there and he says, give me they had sundry packs. They had a lot of toiletries, soaps and toothbrushes and that type of thing. And he says, now go over to the sundry pack and get a bunch of these Kotexes. He goes in there and throws them in. I said, what was going on? He said, well, they tell me one of these gals were bleeding over here. Well, she was having a menstrual cycle on her, so they threw in the Kotexes. I'm going, they actually know how to use these things? I said, you going to go in there and show me? Oh, that's not my pay grade. He said, don't worry, they know how to use them. So you end up with a lot of interesting things like that.
So that's kind of a strange sort of contact to have with the civilian population.
Oh yeah, see, they didn't, but actually that was when I was in the Central Highlands and that. But that's where I think I'm a little bit different. My experience is more out in the field. When
Right.
we were up in the I-Corps area, we were out by ourselves.
Right, there were not a lot of civilians
When
up
we
there
went
anywhere.
out in an area, it was a free fire zone. Basically anything that was moving, because we were watching everything coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Basically 99% was all was a free fire. That's why I often I was kind of glad I could do it that way rather than being back. I was glad I went with the 1st Cabinet rather than staying down south around Saigon. I can see where you could run into
a whole lot more complicated.
a lot more complicated problems.
All right. Now, when you get back to the States, it's the end of '68. You get to go home. You mentioned that you started back up in school pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was drafted in my basic junior year, and came back in November '68, and Ferris had tri-semesters, so I was up there in the winter. I went back right away on there, and I was back in January of '69.
Yeah. Okay. You had mentioned earlier, kind of as you were moving back around the first part of your story, you were talking about race riots or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's when they had the race riots up at Big Rapids, up the Big on there. I was taking a night class up at the Star Education in there, and I was in there with another Marine. I was in senior. I was because transferring from junior college going up to Ferris, I didn't have a lot of the freshman classes.
Right. Yeah.
So in order to graduate, I had to take these freshman classes here. I was 21, 22-year Vietnam vet, sitting in a room of about 40, 50. Probably, at least that, with all these freshmen and everything, and myself and another Marine vet there.
And then what happened?
Well, that time, this was that. We were taking a humanities class, and it was from 68 on Tuesday. It was 68 on Tuesdays and Thursday night, and it must have been Tuesday. Had these race riots. These guys, they came into the Star Educational Building, and they were locking up all the doors and everything towards about 8 o'clock because the class was just leaving. They waited to class. Myself and this other guy, Marine, we were talking to the professor. We were leaving, and a couple of colored guys were. They said, "Well, you guys here, you're locked in for the night and everything." We looked at each other. No way. We just kind of pushed our way through. Grabbed one guy on myself on one shoulder, he on the other shoulder. Dragged him all the way down the stairway. We kicked the door open, and he's yelling, "Open up, the door is open." So they opened up the doors, and they kind of let us go out. And then we went to the commons down there. We were meeting a couple other guys there. Next thing we knew, they had state police there, the sheriff and everything. And probably about an hour or so later, there was a bunch of them in a school bus. They're chanting and everything. Things bouncing back and forth, and we're kind of looking at each other.
Yeah, what was it like to come back to the U.S. at the end of '68?
That was different.
I mean, how did you? What kind of reception did you get when you got back?
For me, it wasn't too bad for coming back to West Michigan. We got a lot of, I don't want to say criticism, but there was a lot of debate and everything. But on Ferris at that time, we had the Vets Club, and there was about 200 people. That was probably one of the biggest organizations on campus at the time for on that.
So that wasn't a place where there was a lot of hostility.
No. Even if there was, we didn't care. Like we were saying before, for me, we didn't. That was a lot of therapeutic, or where we were not bonding, but working with other vets, and everybody was saying, with PTSD, and nobody even knew what that was on the time. And everybody saying, at night I'm getting these weird dreams, and I kind of explained what the weird dream. You think that's what you ought to see what my weird dream is. And the other guy said, "Well, that's nothing. I had a worse one than that one." And after a while, everybody's gotten there having these weird dreams, and we kind of did our own therapy to type of thing together. And so that, for me, that really worked out. That was the best thing I ever did.
Now, once you're back, were you now paying much attention to the news and things like that?
Oh yeah, that's
the way the war was being covered.
Oh yeah, that's what I said before. I said after the Tet Offensive, we thought the thing was going to, then that's one reason I think a lot of guys voted for Nixon at the time, because we did absentee ballots and everything on it. And I think at that time, I think the vast majority, other than the regular Army guys, the officers and everything, were all voting for
Humphrey.
Yeah, Humphrey.
Yeah.
And all the thing was voting for Nixon. Of course, Nixon wanted to think, oh, great, man, he's going to end the war and everything, we're going to be marching out of it. Well, he extended. Yeah, actually, it was between him. Yeah, they actually extended. They probably made it more worse than anything else.
Yeah. Well, the politics behind it were both before and after that were just enormously complicated.
Oh, it was. There was nothing relative. What we were doing at the time, we're coming back here. Everybody says, well, it was on the television. You could see everything. No, there was nothing. It was just propaganda.
Yeah. Or just the way journalists will do things. You get this isolated snapshot of something, and then they make up the rest of the story.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, what got me, I'm thinking about more now, was Walter Cronkite, like we were talking before. Well, he was going in, and there was a stalemate. It was no stalemate. What do you know? I realized it was a political. There's really two reasons for war: it's either economic or political. This was strictly political. There's no oil, or we weren't fighting for oil like we are now. Right. This was strictly a political war. So how do you win a political war?
Yeah, and that ultimately was the larger problem.
Yeah. And in fact, another story, a little quip, was when I was in up north. I had a chance to take I was a two-star general. He was in charge of the I-Corps, the engineer. And they wanted me to take him back to the when we were up Camp Evans to go back to Saigon. So we had a few minutes. So I was sitting in with him in a Jeep, and I said, "Sir," I says, "what's going on, with the war?" I says, "What do we consider being, how do we win this thing or anything?" And I says, "What's going to happen, once we leave, or what's the end game, basically, on this thing here?" He said, "Basically, it's going to end up being like the Old West." The idea was to have places like Hue, Da Nang, Quy Nhon, everything being like they have now, where big base camps and everything on there. The civilians are like the old forts out west. When the things were good, the civilians would go out, do their farming, whatever they got. When things went bad, bring everybody back into the gates. Then if they need some reinforcements, bring them up from Saigon or Hue or Da Nang and everything. Go out, clean out the units. And that's basically what it was going to be, just like the old the Old West. He said that was. I said, "That's it. That's all. That was the best hope we could get." He says, "That's it." They weren't trying to control anything. They were just trying to keep the DMZ. I thought maybe they wanted to try to take over the North or what on that. They were just happy, just like Korea. Yeah. Korea was basically a blueprint.
Yeah, except that Korea was a peninsula and Vietnam wasn't.
Yeah, see, that was the kicker on it. That's how he got into Cambodia and everything else on it.
Yeah. Okay. Now for you go and you get your degree. Then what do you do after that? You get out of school.
Oh, that was another trip, because I had all my background. I had had my own demo teams and everything. I didn't graduate, but I was in OCS and everything. I was going back. I got my degree in BS, or a BS degree in business administration. So I thought, wow, I had it made in the shade. So we had, when I was graduating my senior year, I had my resume and everything. We had people from Caterpillar and everything come in on campus and do the interviews and everything on that. They didn't want nothing to do with it on that. I thought I'd go in there. Well, that's not exactly what we were looking for. We were thinking of going a little bit different direction. So I kind of found out within about 6 months. I took all my experience off of Vietnam and everything. I just put, military, U.S. Army, duty area, Vietnam. That's all I put on there. I didn't put any explanation or anything on that.
Did that help?
No, because it was more the networking. I got a job at Lear Siegler at the time as a data coordinator, mainly because it's not what I know. I mean, I had a background and everything, but I knew a couple of people that worked in there. And from there, I was laid off because this was back in the 70s, and of course, if you know anything about economic conditions of the 70s, that was the world's worst time. You find that you think economic conditions bad enough. Back then, you had inflation in double digits, unemployment double digits, the whole 9 yards. So
yeah, not a great time.
No, it wasn't a good time at all. Economic, and I was just married. In fact, I met my wife almost the day I got out of Vietnam. That was November 68. We were married in September of 70. I was going to my last year up at school. I had one semester to go. I was driving back and forth with a couple of other guys to up to Ferris, everything on that. And I worked at, like I said, Lear Siegler. Then I got laid off because I was the last one in. I was
first one out.
First one out. And a neighbor of mine worked for Clark Equipment. It was on Richmond and Leonard, metal fabrication on that. And he said, well, you know how to do grinders and stuff. They said, we need people like that. I thought, well, I'm not that fussy. I didn't know how long I was going to be laid off. So I went with them and did an interview on that. They didn't care if you had what kind of bag. They didn't even hardly even look at my resume. They took me out on the shop floor and says, they're showing me these grinders. Can you do this? Well, sure. Everything on that. Then I was working there a couple weeks. Then I had to join the union, so I was in the union, and they put the job postings up. So I go, and then they had big welder with with setup and everything. So I signed that on there. Nobody else wanted to do it, so I never had a welding hood on in my life. So with OJT. So for a week or so, I was learning how to do some MIG welding, and well, we got a job over for one thing leads to another. About 6-8 months down the line, get a call back from Lear Siegler, and wanted me to come back to work. And I'm going, I say, sorry, Bob, I don't think I can do that. So I'm making too much money now. No. He says, I want to talk to you. Come back. So I sit down there, and what I was doing, we were working a ton of overtime. I was in the, well, you don't want to be in a union anyway, or anything, because even with the Lear Siegler, they had a union, but I was in the administration end of it on that. He said, oh, you got to pay all those union dues. I said, well, I don't worry about it, because I can, actually I ended up with better health benefits than they did. I had dental and vision with it. And what I was, they were working so much over, couldn't get enough people in there. What I was doing, I was working a double shift on Friday nights. Everything was piece rate, was rated, and I knew what the jobs we were doing. In the first 8 hours, I could make up enough. So when I was working the second shift, we were working on third shift. All I had to do was work 4 or 5 hours, and I could take 2-3 hours off, because supervisors, if you can make 100%,
right.
You can't do any more than 100%. Man, I had to make in the shade and everything. Then we were working Saturdays and Sundays. And that's time and a half for Saturdays and double time for Sundays. I said, "There's no." We were going down there. He says, "Yeah, you're making more money than I was as a supervisor." They had Lear Siegler and everything on that. Then after that, what was it? I was there for about a year. Well, I'll say about 18 months. They took the whole plant and moved it up to Tennessee. And they wouldn't let anybody move down there.
Oh.
That's what this is when everybody was starting to outsource everything on that. So then my wife was an LPN. She worked with the doctor, and he was doing some work with Steelcase. So I worked there about a year at Steelcase this was in 79 to about 80, 81 there. And I walked in there, and the first time I said, because everybody thought that was the greatest place to work, and they had their bonuses. And by the time I'm figuring, well, their bonuses, I'm doing some work. Basically, all it was back pay. because you had your day rate, and working on second shift, all you did was cleaning up these schedules and everything on that. At the end of the week, I basically had just enough money to pay my bills, had enough money put in my pocket to use for gas money, and I had to have the bonuses and everything just to pay the house payment.
Right.
I had to pay the house payment 3, 4 on it. Then, I lived out, just moved out to Coopersville, and that's when they were still building the Coopersville plant. So I thought I could try to get into GM out there. They were running a jobs fair at, I think it's the Army Reserve out there on Michigan Street in College, out in that area. So, of course, the first couple days you couldn't even get near the place. I mean, especially Michigan around there, they were. So, Wednesday and Thursday, I thought I was giving my wife said, "Well, why don't you just give it another, try on there, So I went there with nobody around there. Just drove up to the Army, walked in there, gave them my resume, filled it out, and said, "Let's see those guys. Go talk to them." There was 2 guys from Coopersville over there, and I talked to them for a while and told them, I lived out there. Oh, that's good, and they were all nice and smiles, and they just put the thing on a pile. I thought, I'll never hear from them again. And about a couple of weeks later, this was February, around February, it was about the 1st of March, I was out raking my lawn. This was on a Saturday morning. And my wife comes out and says, "There's a guy from General Motors that wants to talk to you." I said, "What am I, 9 o'clock? It's Saturday morning." I thought, that's just Arnie down there, down in the corner. He wants to, he's kidding around with me. So I'm going to laugh. After a while, I'd start talking to him, this guy's for real. So here again, went down there, did an interview, and at that time they had that's the only thing that helped me was my Vietnam experience. General Motors was going to, were giving Vietnam vets preferential treatment. It wasn't anything I did or anything on that, so that's how I basically ended up working for General. I tried to get into Coopersville. It was still being, it was being completed. It was still under construction. So I was worked in the Burlingame plant for a while on that. I thought then you had to be in the union. After 90 days, then you could transfer out. Well, I didn't even make them hardly 90 days. I got laid off and ended up on 36th Street on there. And I was there for 28 years, 28.3 till they closed the plant. And I ended up, I was working production at the time, and myself and a neighbor and I, we went back and forth, traded off driving, did our own carpooling and everything. And we kind of looked at each other and said, we're not going to be, doing this for 30, because I was 36 at the time when I went in there. I said, I'm going to be 66 when I get out of it. And if I stay here for 30 years, I'm going to be 66. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this production work. So I ended up taking pre-apprentice classes and apprenticeship tests. I ended up being a millwright welder. I liked the welding portion of it, so they tried to talk me doing in the tool and die and that type of thing. Decided that's so I took the millwright welder classification. And everybody says, well, with all your background and everything, I said, well, here again, I did the same thing as, well, I didn't realize, but that's part of my PSTD type thing. I didn't like anybody in management.
Right.
So here again, kind of, good thing I was probably in a union shop and everything on that. But they did the same thing with me as what they call steel stores. This where they bring in the coils and everything. This kind of put me out as the only millwright on first shift, and they just
left you alone.
Kind of let me do my thing. I worked with the setup guys and everything, and the idea was they wanted somebody for maintenance. If something went wrong right away, get out there, figure out what was wrong with it, analyze it on it. Well, you had a lot of free time in between. Well, I don't sit around too well, so I worked up with some of the setup guys, and we walked around with the different operators and got different things set up and everything on that. And that's what basically I ended up doing a lot of the ergonomics and safety things. They have a lot of safety inspections and everything, things that had to be done, that type of thing. So I ended up doing a lot of that work, a lot of oddball stuff.
Now, to look back on the whole thing, I mean, you've mentioned sort of some of the effects that your time in the service had on you. You've noticed that you did take a certain amount of kind of basically PTSD out with you. There were certain memories and things like that. Beyond that, or how else do you think your time in the service wound up affecting you, either positively or negatively?
Oh, yeah, quite. Positive or negatively. Yeah, I never really try to look on the negative ends of it. I try to always be positive, because even everybody says, well, your background in data processing or business administration and everything, how did you end up doing welding and stuff like that? But we're an engineer. I wasn't that mechanically inclined. I always try to kind of look ahead, because my idea is I couldn't design a car or a motor, but try to put a car together. I can know all the nuts and bolts and that type of the same thing with ergonomics. Why, that's how I got involved in ergonomics and safety, because a lot of times you get an engineer, he try to analyze it too much. And being a combat engineer, we used everything we had around us. I didn't care too much about ordering parts. I just kind of looked around. If we need some safety rails and everything, I wouldn't order the pipe and everything. I go out in the back and find pipe, or go to our whatever we had available in our use what's available. That's basically what a combat engineer did. Like we were explaining to you too, when we were in English and Bongsong there, we were making hoochie places to live. Well, we didn't have lumber, 2x4s, 2x6s, or 12. We were taking ammo cases. In this case, we were using cases they're using for 2.75 rockets, the gunships and ARA were using. They had hundreds of these things laying around. We would literally take them apart. We would build our own hooches, everything out. We would put sandbags in like about 6 foot high, then put them all the way up, and put a flat roof, and then these cases, they had asphalt and plastic. We made our own roofs, and waterproof roofs, and they used, well, that's kind of what they call it. They had a name for it, but it was like a liquefied asphalt. And I put on top of it. Then we had walls in between each one. Well, the case would open up, so we put it sideways. So when you open it up, you had a place for storage, and you had a lid. So you put it up and then lock it out. So we had that, and we even had our indoor shower and everything. Put a big gas tank, old fuel from an old jet plane or fighter and everything. And I fill that full of water, put it up on top of the roof. It made our own supports, and used the sun to heat it up in the daytime. Now that was our hot water at night.
So you learned how to make things work.
Yeah.
As much as anything else. All right. Well, it makes for a good story. So
yeah, basically we were a jack of all trades and a master of none.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in and telling me about it today.
Oh, yeah. Well,
all right.
hope you learned something.
Certainly did. Okay. That works.